Well, hey, there's a new Warhammer 40,000 box, and it's gonna have lots of models. And I want like 4 of them. But more than that, I want to know how the sprues are all laid out, so I made this video where I talk about it. Convention for this medium dictates that I chew through and waste a bunch of your time explaining to you that I don't know what I'm talking about. These are all guesses. Okay, cool. So there will be a launch box, and presumably there will then be the 3 starter sets. Presumably. I don't know if it's going to happen. I mean, they've done it the last 4 times, so why would they do it this time? The launch box will sell out before the day is over. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it's what happens with everything they sell. Why would it be any different this time? The launch box will have a bunch of models. The sort of retailer advertisement said 14 sprues. And looking at it, that's about 7 units per side. This is just like indomitus and dominion boxes. 8th of Stormcast 1 had very different layouts for the sprues from indomitus and dominion. But indomitus and dominion then had really consistent layouts that look like the same layout as Leviathan seems to hint at. So let's talk about what those layouts were and then try to map that information onto Leviathan. Right, so you can look at indomitus and break it down and get what I think then happened with Dominion and what did happen with Leviathan. They start with the launch box that has everything, and then after a while it's broken down into 2 starter boxes. The small starter box and the medium starter box. There's also a large starter box, which is just the medium starter box with some plastic terrain, so don't worry about it. Small starter box will have half of the basic troops for each side. The medium starter box will have the other half of the basic troops and one of the cooler troops. In the case of the Space Marines, the cooler troops were the bikes, the cooler Necrons were the tripod triatch slasher guys, and the Command Edition had the same things as the Elite Edition. Neat! The small starter and the medium starter had different leaders, but no edition had what I keep calling the super best friends, the Necron Royal Court or the Space Marine Honored of the Chapter. Like a business that's trying to execute some sort of smooth, silky pipeline, Games Workshop followed an identical pattern with the Dominion release. The Dominion launch box, which I swear I saw last weekend, contained 2 sets of troops for each side, which could be built as the 2 small units you get in the starters, or as 1 big unit as depicted for the launch box. The Dominion boxes then had junior leaders, senior leaders, and heavies. Neat! As well, each side had the super best friends, including the only sprue of Stormcast I've ever seen that has made me want to buy a launch box. So with that, we come to Leviathan. We come to this mess of a picture of the Leviathan contents, which once again, if you go in and pick really closely, you can see a double squad of grunts for each side, heavies, several things that could be heavies, several things that could be super best friends, junior leaders, and senior leaders, which is consistent with the 14 sprues. This revealed picture is wrong. This officially revealed picture does not show the correct models. The problem is not my intentional typos, the problem is the photographer's typos, the image editor's typos, and I think they're doing a fine job. Whatever. These are the 10 Space Marine Fireboys that were revealed at Warhammer Fest. I say they are wrong because the 3 in the top middle are the same sculpt. If I had to guess, I would guess that the top brother and the one immediately to the left of him are 2 pictures of the same model, or maybe the same picture wiggled somehow. If one looks to the left of these 3, you see a Space Marine with a double purity seal on their weapon. No other model in this squad has a double purity seal, so this is the odd Marine out. if they needed 2 separate photos for this doubling up and broke one or both of the models with the double purity seal, this would make sense. Now, looking around, there are 2 Marines with a single purity seal on their weapon. No other Marines seem to have a single purity seal on their weapon, along with a purity seal on their leg. There's also Marines skulking around there with a spare fuel canister on his left hip. The final sculpt is the Sergeant and the Grenadier, both of whom have their weapons slung identically, their torso posed identically, their head and arms and hands are almost identical, so we know those are the same sculpts. So presumably, the small, medium, and large sets will each have 1 sprue to assemble a squad of 5 Marines, while the launch box will have 2 sprues, which you can assemble a full, fat, double squad with all the sculpts. The Termagant sprues, once again, appear to be a doubled-up set of sprues. Due to time constraints, I didn't go through the Termagant sprue with the same neurotic level of detail. I'm just going to assume this is 2 sprues, as that would evenly divide the number of Termagants and evenly divide the number of Ripper swarms. I'm a little annoyed at the change to 28mm as a matter of principle. It's not going to affect me, but it seems a bit greasy after the 9th edition combat patrol will have spammed out Termagants on 25s. As someone who's historically been an orc player, I was delighted by the image of these hulking, uncouth brutes who are a little bit too big for their 25mm bases. Putting them on 32s just seems overgroomed. Knobs on 32s look much better though. But what's in the box? What's in the box? Well, there's probably going to be those 4 sprues of basic troops on each side. The retail trailer, linked below, showed 13 sprues or 14 sprues, which will be how the rest of the models are divided. I do think one of the sprues will have the 2 junior leaders on it. That will line up with Indomitus putting the Space Marine Lieutenant and the Necron Underlord, along with Dominion putting Stabgrot and the Lady with the Book on the same sprue, along with some Killaboss character. So the next obvious question is, who do we think the junior leader is going to be? The Primaris Like, Share, and Subscribe Tenant is an obvious choice as the junior commander on the Space Marine side. This would line up with the Blade Guard Like, Share, and Subscribe Tenant in the 9th edition starter sets. The only Tyranid model with a similar size and complexity to the Primaris Like, Share, and Subscribe Tenant is the Tyranid Prime. Actually, I think the Tyranid Prime is the only commander model of that relative scale, which is nice because this probably will be the one set I buy and he pretty. This leaves 6 units to divide up amongst the Ultramarine side of the box. I think it's obvious which models go into which units. After watching the reveal video, I think it's also obvious which units go where for the Tyranids, or rather, which models go into which units for the Tyranids. There's the big bug that likes to eat psychers. There's the gorgeous floating psychic squid and its psychic squid babies. There's the proper Tyranids. There's the Tyranid with an uncomfortably posed tail. There's the kind of dumb-looking heavy artillery Tyranids. And there's the totally not Termagant replacement Tyranids. Reveals have shown us that the Terminators will be on their own sprue, separate from the troops, separate from any commander, and in my opinion, that makes them the elite unit that will be in the medium and large starters. My next guess is that the Neurogaunts will be the elite unit in the medium and large starters. While I know several other models look significantly more elite than Neurogaunts, I think that the Neurogaunts will take up enough sprue space it makes sense not to try and squeeze them into the Super Best Friends sprue. As well, I also think having a substantially larger volume of Tyranids overwhelming these elite Space Marines does sort of add to this sort of ludonarrative illustration concept gobbledygook that lines up nicely This does pose the distressing possibility there will never be a standalone Neurogaunt kit. My final guess is how they will divide the senior leader from the rest of the models. This will dictate which models show up in the Super Best Friends sprues. My guess is that the senior leader for the Tyranids will be the uncomfortably posed large Tyranid, while the senior leader for the Ultramarines will be the Space Marine Captain in Terminator armor. The Space Marine Captain in Terminator armor here has some nice sculpted detail that lines up with the Primaris like, share, and subscribe tenant. That sort of parity on their size will probably mean at some point in the next decade we see a Leviathan Veterans box with these two commanders and some other stuff. And that's it. That's my delay. That's my drawn out prediction and guess. The Ultramarines will put the Dreadnought, the Librarian and Terminator armor, the Bad Doctor, and the Old Guys as the Super Best Friends that will be available post-launch as a separate sprue. Or heck, maybe they'll be available in some sort of combat patrol or boarding action box. Who knows? With all that in mind, it puts these models as the Ultra Best Friends on the bug side. Staring at these, something interesting occurs to me about these models and the Ultramarines. Combat patrols or versions of the game with a fixed list of models have become something Games Workshop is gently egging, so why not package these 4 units along with a single basic troop sprue and call it a combat patrol. You could even charge combat patrol prices for it, which would be consistent with the prices of the Super Best Friends in the past, and would explain the large amount of models on both sides in the new Super Best Friends sprue. That's all I've got. I could probably talk more if I had somebody misunderstanding me or asking further questions. But in terms of use my opinions for internet fame, that's all I've got. If you want me to do more things like this, then you gotta get the numbers up and make this more well received than the painting videos or the podcasts. If you don't know what I mean by painting videos or podcasts, well, somewhere on the screen, or somewhere at the end of the screen, there should be a bunch of links and stuff showing the other stuff you can get if you subscribe or freeload from our YouTube channel. Woo! You really should subscribe, though. It's free. And may the Force be with you.